Hey, it's Quadix here. If my voice sounds like janky or anything, I'm recording this at 5 just to be able to, daily upload. Sure you like this video, subscribe, my voice doesn't always sound this janky, and let's get into it. By the way, the Ambu's Naruto. Gengetsu Hozuki clenched his fist. The second Mizukage was not a happy man these days. It was due to multiple reasons, most in part of them being the fact that he was losing a war. His village was on the back foot, unable to fight against the combined might of Land of Earth and Land of Lightning. The Second Ninja War had started with a great promise for Kiri, but like other great nations, it had also suffered due to the chaos. The second Hokage was dead. So was the second Raikage. Yes, both Konoha and Kumo had plenty of skilled shinobi to fight on despite the fall of their leaders. Both nations had great armies which they were using ruthlessly to carve each other up. Meanwhile, Kiri was locked in a dual war with Kumo and Ima. It had just been 2 months since the war begun, and already thousands of shinobi were dead, at least 1,000 from Kiri's own lands. The death toll didn't only include the common shinobi ranks, but also Ambu, hunter ninjas, and even some of the 7 great swordsmen of the mist. Gengetsu cursed his own petty rivalry with the second Tsuchikage that made him take impulsive decisions that led to the deaths of 4 of his 7 great ninja swordsmen at the hands of Mu and his student Onoiki. Now Kiri was on the back foot, with his strength dwindling and the shinobi morale collapsing as news of 4 of their strongest falling to enemy hands reached the masses. But Gengetsu was not one to give up so easily. Despite the loss, he knew Kiri had plenty of skilled fighters in its ranks. Men and women ready to fight for their motherland and honor their fallen comrades. It was from them that he had already chosen 3 of the 4 vacant spots in the ranks of the 7 ninja swordsmen. A woman from the Hunter Corps who would now wield the sewing needle, Nuiberi. Let me know if I pronounced that right, I feel like I butchered it. Her ice release and sharp instincts would make her the perfect new master of the blade now that its former wielder was slain. He had chosen 2 of his most powerful and dangerous jonin to wield Samahara, shark skin, and Kubikiri Boko, executioner's blade. Their violent nature and monstrous power would serve them well in handling those dangerous swords. Ameyuri Ringo was still serving us faithfully as the master of the twin blades Kiba, while Mangetsu Hozuki, his own son and heir, wielded the helmet splitter. Gengetsu knew his son had potential not just to lead the Hozuki clan in the future, but also Kiri with his power and cunning. Jinpaki Munashi had survived his battle against the Tsuchikage with his blade Shibuki, and was eager to blow his enemies to oblivion despite the wounds he sustained. Unfortunately, the last of the holy blades, Hiramekari, was destroyed alongside its master when he fell in battle against Mu, the second Tsuchikage. The loss of the swordsman was a heavy blow, but the destruction of one of the 7 holy blades was an unforgivable sin, one which the people of Kiri would make Eva repent in blood for. Unfazed, and they're really getting him back in blood. Unfazed, Gengetsu had ordered the creation of a new sword in order to make his mark on history. He decided to create twin swords, but while the Kiba fanged swords allowed its master power over lightning and destruction, He wanted these new blades to be the embodiment of his own rage, which was swift and brutal. His weaponsmiths had outdone themselves and prepared a dangerous weapon. Now, the Mizukage had to find the one most suited to wield them. Learning from his mistakes, the second Mizukage had chosen his greatest swordsmen not just for their power, but also for their personality. He looked at his sides and observed the 6 dangerous swordsmen watching the arena below them with different expressions across their faces. Zabuza, Kisame, Jinpaki, Ameyuri were excited for the fights that were happening. The 4 of them were the most fiercest amongst the group and stroked fear in the hearts of their enemy when they stepped onto the battlefield. While Haku and Mangetsu didn't betray any of their feelings, impassively watching the battles happening below them, but in their sharp eyes, the Mizukage saw a keen intelligence as they searched for the one who shall join their group. Gengetsu himself nodded proudly at the 6 of them. They were not just powerful shinobi, but were soon going to be his trusted lieutenants who shall lead Kiri's army to a glorious victory against their enemies. It was why he frowned on seeing the senseless slaughter happening below in the arena. His veteran gaze caught sight of quite a few Ambu, hunter ninjas, Jonin, Chunin, fighting to the toaster bath in order to make themselves immortal in Kiri's history by becoming the 7th Swordsmen. Many of them had already toaster bathed, or were badly injured in their quest to achieve eternal glory. More would soon follow. Gengetsu sighed when he saw one of the hunter ninjas butcher 2 Jonin in a hail of poison needles. The 2 men dropped dead instantly just as 2 Jonin joined forces together and toaster bathed a lone Anbu. However, their victory was short-lived as the dying Anbu beheaded them both before falling on the ground. Barely dropped a live grenade. That's the way of the mist, brats. You would do well to remember it, warned Jinpachi fiercely. This is a tradition even if you had to go through. And so shall every other swordsman of the future, reminded Ameyuri, earning dark smirks from Zabuza and Kisame. Even as the group squabbled amongst themselves, Gengetsu's attention was diverted towards the dying Ambu on the ground. The Jonin had skewed his lungs and neck, leaving no room for recovery. Watching him choke and drown in his own fluids was a gruesome sight, and made the Mizukage wonder as to why he even agreed to allow this tradition to happen. It would be acceptable in times of peace, but he needed every shinobi during this war. But he also knew he had to tread a careful line with Kiri's elite ninja clans who preferred the old ways and tradition, even if it was senseless at times. If he was to win this war, it would be best if he sated the desires of those clans. Being a Kage was a gruesome business after all. However, he was surprised when another man dressed in Ambu gear stepped before the dying Ambu. The new shinobi was a tall man with shining blonde hair and sharp blue eyes. Hidden behind his plain Ambu mask, he was dressed in a traditional Ambu gear and black pants with gauntlet protecting his arms. He wore fingerless gloves, and Gengetsu saw a face mask protecting the skin of the man behind the Ambu mask. In his hands was a traditional sword. To the Mizukage's surprise, the dying Ambu weakly raised his fist before thumping it against his chest. That stopped the squabbling amongst the people beside the Mizukage, as they all saw the strange scene. A salute. The blonde Ambu gave a single nod of acknowledgement before he slashed his... Oh, that's tough. Most fighters would have missed the attack, but not the Mizukage and the other swordsmen. The wounded Ambu was freed from his agony as a swift strike toaster bathed him, basically. That little display had not gone unnoticed by the remaining 10 fighters in the arena, all of whom warily stared at the last Ambu in the arena. Hope you last longer than your little friend there, mocked the hunter ninja. Ambu are pretty pathetic if that's the standard you hold yourself up to these days. mocked one of the two Jonin who had toaster baked the other Ambu. The remaining 7 Jonin nodded to their other competitors as they all ganged up and surrounded the lone Ambu from all sides. They all had to jump back when the lone Ambu picked up his fallen brother's sword and threw a kunai 5 feet ahead of him. Ready to die, snarled one of the Jonins, earning a hidden smile from the blonde Ambu. We'll see, he replied. The Mizukage had only a moment before all the ninjas charged at the lone Ambu at once from all sides. It was then the power roared, the intensity of the killing intent grabbed the instant attention of the remaining great swordsmen completely. They all watched as the 2 Chunin and 1 Jonin collapsed instantly. The rest of the enemies flinched but charged forth regardless. The Ambu raised his sword and Gengetsu saw a razor-sharp aura cover them completely. Wind Chakra. The first to reach the Ambu was the hunter ninja, who expertly threw a storm of poison needles at him, all of whom were effectively torn to pieces by one of the Ambu's sword. It allowed the remaining Jonin to close in and try to skewer him from his sides and rear. Mengetsu Hazuki narrowed his eyes sharply when he saw the Ambu rotate his sword, sharply in a circular motion. Painful screams erupted in the arena as the 3 of the Jonin saw their own kunai and tanto being broken in half, courtesy of the wind chakra powered strikes. Their shock was clearly visible as they even failed to see the move before it destroyed their weapons, and it didn't stop there as their palms were torn up. The remaining shinobi instantly jumped away to avoid a similar fate, leaving the 3 stunned men to their fate. The blonde Ambu was upon the wounded men instantly, and much to the surprise of the Mizukage and his personal guard, he delivered crushing but non-lethal strikes to his stunned opponents that made them collapse to the ground in a small pool of their own blood. A thick mist enveloped the arena, and terrifying laugh of the hunter ninja and his remaining accomplices echoed. Water style, water bullets. Lightning style, electromagnetic murder. From the mist, a hail of different jutsus charged towards the Ambu, who was already finished with his own hand seals. Earth wall. The explosion rocked the arena as chakra fought against chakra, and just when the dust was about to settle, the mist was violently dismissed by roaring waves clearly exposing the now surprised Kiri warriors. They watched their lone opponent step outside from the earthen walls that defended him with his hands clasped together. Now it ends. Gengetsu and his swordsmen all tense when the air started to become cold. It was impossible to describe the feeling in words, but if they could, then it was an experience of having every ounce of light getting sucked away. They each felt the feeling of death grow stronger and stronger as the remaining 7 opponents of the Ambu suddenly dropped their weapons and desperately clutched their necks as they fell to their knees. Gengetsu narrowed his eyes sharply when the Ambu clasped his hands firmly. His opponents vomited, but instead of blood, gore, or fluids, they spat up nothing but thick, dark smoke. No, it wasn't smoke. It was ash. The men and women thrashed painfully as more and more ash spewed from them. Zabuza, Kisame, Jinpachi, and Ameyuri watched in fascination as a lone blonde calmly stepped in between his thrashing enemies. Yield. One of the Jonin glared at him murderously as he picked up his kunai and made a desperate charge toward his bitter enemy. The blonde Ambu closed his eyes in resignation before clenching his fist shut. Gengetsu watched in fascination and horror as the charging Jonin screamed in pain when his skin itself was set on fire. The poor man couldn't stop even as his entire body was set aflame. 3 seconds later, he exploded in a shower of insides, basically. All the while, the lone Ambu stood detached and untouched. Yield. Mengetsu and Haku felt their skin tremble on hearing that deep voice full of killing intent. Those cold blue eyes were devoid of any mercy, the stare of death itself demanding the creature before it to make their choice. And they made it. Gengetsu breathed a sigh of relief when one by one the remaining survivors barely nodded their heads in resignation. Ambu gave a single nod of acknowledgement before unclenching his fists, much to the relief of his enemies as they stopped coughing and mercifully drifted off to unconsciousness. The medics and emergency supporter staff rushed in the arena immediately, taking steps to stabilize the wounded and seal away the dead. It was over. Thanks for watching. I'm not sure where the rest of this is going to be uploaded, so I'll have a link to the whole playlist in the description or the pinned comments. Stay hydrated.